It's Ashes to Ashes here at the Althouse Arboretum. The local community organization, run by nonprofit Green Allies, has become a local hotspot with a newly established eco-store, tons of community programs, and beautifully forested trails. The Arboretum has been loved by our entire community. However, recently, the emerald ash borer, an invasive insect from China, has taken to the ash trees and forced the Arboretum, due to liability issues and safety concerns, to remove all 300 of their ash trees. To understand the extent of this dilemma and take a deeper look inside the Arboretum, we're going to talk to Ken Hamilton, the Executive Director of Green Allies and the Arboretum. Hi, Ken.
How you doing, Carly?
Now, what's your role here at the Althouse Arboretum?
I am the Executive Director of the Green Allies organization. We are the managers of the Althouse Arboretum. And so my role here is to basically run the entire facility.
And how long has this facility been running?
Well, Green Allies has been in existence for almost 5 years, and the Althouse Arboretum, we've been in operation for 4.
Very exciting. Now let's move on to the ash trees, the issue at hand. Now, how many ash trees do you have on this property?
We did a survey several months ago, and we ended up with just over 300 ash trees on the property.
And now what does the emerald ash borer do that makes it such a threat?
Well, the emerald ash borer is an invasive insect. So it got here from Asia, and it's unique in its ability to eat away at the cambium layer of the tree, which is just under the bark. And that then strangles the tree, kills the tree, and causes the issue here. Unfortunately, you don't see the damage until it's too late. Then you just basically find your ash trees dying off.
Now, how are these trees being removed?
So we looked into all possibilities, and our only option that we see that was feasible was to have a logging company come in and remove the trees for us.
And now, how will removing these trees impact the Arboretum and the forest ecosystem?
Well, first of all, removing the trees is damaging enough because you're removing the habitat, and more importantly, you're removing the canopy, part of the canopy, because we have so many ash trees, and in some areas so densely populated with ash trees that we'll be removing the entire canopy. That then changes the microclimate on the ground, which then alters the entire ecosystem of that particular area. So that's one concern that we have of the removal. The second concern is that we're removing ash trees in very specific locations where they're not quite as densely compacted. So we're still going to have a forest in that particular area, but what we will have is openings in the canopy. And the question will be, do the invasive plants come in and take over, which is most likely, or are we going to be able to control that and keep the forest ecosystem the way it is? So either way, it's going to have a devastating impact on our particular forest ecosystem.
So are there any plans for reforestation?
So we looked into and have plans to do as much as we possibly can to reforest it. So we've been working, last year I've worked with Cornell University, who came down, their public garden management class would come down here, survey the area, survey the ash trees, looked at what conditions would occur if the ash trees were removed, gave us recommendations on what would be best to reforest and how we might want to do that. Considering that we're an arboretum and a natural arboretum, we're looking at planting native trees in locations where the ash tree removal is greatest. Where the ash trees are more sparsely populated and we still have most of the canopy of the forest, that area is going to be pretty much left alone and hope to regenerate back as a forest itself. So we're going to be planting trees where the ash tree removal has been extensive, and then we're going to be hopefully managing the forests where the ash tree removal isn't quite as bad.
And now when the ash trees have been logged and removed, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be used as firewood, or what are they going to do?
Yeah, so the logging company actually exports the lumber. The smaller pieces, the logging company uses and sells as firewood. What they don't take is the canopy of the tree in which the branch is either too small or not straight. and those pieces are going to be left on the ground. So that means we're going to have to come in and clean up the mess. That's one of the big problems with this type of removal, is that they're not removing the entire tree. They're only removing the valuable parts of the tree. What's left behind, we as an organization, the Althouse Arboretum, is going to have to clean up in order to reforest. So we're going to be pulling that out, and we're going to be offering it to neighbors for firewood, and then also using it for some unique projects and some ideas that we have going forward with these ash branches.
Now, you mentioned that there are a lot of problems with this type of removal, so why removing the trees altogether? Are there any other methods?
So we basically were caught in a corner. There's a chemical treatment that can be used for ash trees. We looked into that, and we wanted to go with that, but we found out the cost was just too much. It's cost prohibitive. It's a chemical treatment that you inject into the tree. You do it every 2 years at several $100s per tree. So having 300 trees on the property, that just becomes too much. So with that option, basically the only other option we had, not available to us financially, this one was the only way we could go.
And is there anything that we can do to save the ash trees?
The question everybody asks, is there something we can do to save the ash trees? The emerald ash borer is an insect that we have no known way of stopping. If you have an ash tree on your property and you want to save it, one ash tree, probably you can chemically treat it, inject it, and save that particular tree. The difficulty there, just so everyone understands, is that if you have already had harm done to your tree by the emerald ash borer, injecting it will stop the emerald ash borer from further damage, but will not correct the damage that is already done. So trees that are already harmed are going to remain that way forever. So as an individual, you can save individual trees or small amounts of trees, but the emerald ash borer is one insect that man has no way of stopping here. And as far as I can see, there's very little we can do to prevent almost the extinction of the ash tree, kind of in the same vein as the American chestnut tree, where you see them just basically disappear from our forest. And so we just have to wait and see what happens.
All right, thanks for chatting with us today, Ken. You were very informative.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm here with Paul Freda, a certified arborist. He's going to give us a little overview of the emerald ash borer. So can you tell us a little bit about the emerald ash borer?
I'd be happy to. The emerald ash borer is an introduced pest from China. So that means there's no native predators for it, and the insect populations can grow out of control. They're not checked by a natural predator. Some woodpeckers will eat them still, but they're not, they haven't grown up and evolved with the insect. So the problem is with our white ash trees, it's an extremely large population of the forest. In some places it can be up to 30% of the forest. And now we have no real protection against this insect, which is outright killing the trees. It's a primary pathogen, primary destroyer of trees. So what happens is, if you can think of a tree as this round thing, the cambium is a layer right in between the outside bark and the inside wood. And this is where this insect likes to feed. And instead of our natural borers, which can feed in a straight line, the emerald ash borer feeds in a serpentine, so it kills all of this sap flow. And that's how the tree, sap flow is disrupted and the tree dies. So normally we see the tops of the tree to start to die out. And then a lot of sprouts will come down lower in the tree as a response for the tree trying to grow and to remain alive.
And in your experience, is there anything that can be done to prevent this or to correct this?
Well, there is insecticides that people will try to use to put into the trunk and to kill the insects that are inside the cambium layer. Can be effective, may not be effective, but at any rate you would have to do it every 2 years or so. So what the recommended procedure is to protect the trees that are really important. and then just to remove the trees that aren't as important, or you don't need to, because it's several $100s to protect one tree. You can imagine that if you have several trees in your property, you can't protect them all.
And what are the first signs that you can
Right. The
see?
first signs we would see would be the tops dying or even just getting thinner. So we usually see a nice full leaf surface on the whole trunk, and then certain sections or the very top can be just thinner. The other thing that we can see are white flecks on the trunk, and sometimes that's woodpeckers who are going after the insects that live inside here for food.
And is there anything else about the ash trees that you feel would be beneficial for the public to know?
Well, what's important to know is that once the tree is attacked or starting to be attacked, you have at least 2 years before the tree completely dies. And then even after the tree is dead, from whatever point the wood dies, you would have at least 2 or 3 years before it becomes so rotten that it would start to fall out. So it's not as if it's going to happen overnight and the tree's going to fall right away, but once the tree is dead, you really have to keep your eye on it and know what's underneath it, because if anything were to start failing and the branches start coming down, you can have damage, whatever's there.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. Thank you for coming out today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, this is a white ash tree, an example of how large they can get. And what also, if you can see the features of the twig, they're very stiff and fairly straight up and down. The other thing that we can see here is that there's some very silvery patches on the trunk, and that's an example of where the woodpeckers are trying to get the insect. The insect is living just inside the bark. When the insect is finished feeding on the bark, it has to emerge from the bark, and there'll be small holes, if you want to get a close-up, such as these here. Sometimes this is hard to see, but that's how they emerge as adults. Then they fly, mate, and go to other trees to lay eggs and reproduce, continuing the process.
If you'd like to help the Althouse Arboretum and Green Allies continue to be a center point in our community for generations to come, consider making a donation. You can visit althousearboretum.org and make your contribution today. This has been Karli Tellis with the PCTV Network.